21 minutes past now. In something of a surprise, the American musician Bob Dylan has become the first songwriter to be awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. He was cited for creating new poetic expressions. Our arts correspondent David Sillito has more.
There was an expectant buzz outside the Swedish Academy's doors this morning. The Literature Prize had been delayed for a week. The Academy said it was just a diary issue, but many suspected the jury was taking its time because it was about to spring a surprise. And they were right.
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. The gasps and cheers for a songwriter who perhaps more than anyone turned the lyrics of pop music into poetry.
For having created new poetic expressions within the great American song tradition.
This is called Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man. They play a song for me.
It's been a long time coming. It's more than 50 years ago that he became a figurehead for a generation with songs that took the traditions of folk and protest and then span off musically and lyrically into places that the rest of pop music then followed. For years his name has popped up as a potential Nobel Prize winner, only for his fans to be disappointed. The social conscience of his early songs were followed by lyrics that could be moving, meaningful and puzzling in a single verse. These are songs that have become part of our culture.
If you look at the kind of the prestigious writers in whose footsteps he's following in, I mean, Eugene O'Neill, T.S. Eliot, William Faulkner, Hemingway, Steinbeck. I mean, it's pretty heavy company, but I think if you are going to put anyone in there, it's pretty much Dylan. I think the work stands up.
Yes, and how many times must a man turn his head?
He's an artist who's often seemed uncomfortable with the awe and regard his work has attracted. But he couldn't avoid the accolades. He's never stopped performing, never stopped writing. The prize was always going to be his, eventually. David Sillito, ABC News.
Well, let's discuss all of this with Sid Griffin, who's joined us, the American singer who's written 2 books about Bob Dylan. Good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you all.
Is it deserved, in your opinion?
There will be those in the world of what I call straight literature that might dispute this. He is up against, I'm going to have to do this phonetically, Haruki Murakami, the Japanese novelist who's very well known, and Philip Roth is even better known on these shores. But nonetheless, I think Dylan does deserve this. I do think, at the risk of having some people raise their eyebrows, he's a Cervantes, he's a Shakespeare, he's a Wordsworth for our time.
He's up there with Shakespeare.
His songs, apart from, he's not really a melodicist, but he's a brilliant lyricist. And his songs will last the test of time. In 200 years, people will sing his songs in private, they'll sing them in public, and they'll certainly sing them at political rallies.
And he's charted periods of American history. That's one of the things that makes him interesting.
Well, he's one of the... Time magazine had the 100 most important Americans, 100 most influential people of the last century, and Dylan made that list. Pop singers don't make a list like this. He's not just someone that sold records. A lot of people have sold more records than Bob Dylan, but Bob Dylan is influential. The sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters of Bob Dylan, the artists, are going to give us great-grandchildren. And it's like throwing that pebble into the pond, and the pond now reverberates with the waves. Dylan's, he's taken Woody Guthrie and old slices of the old weird America and put them into a way that the man on the street can understand. He's written great songs about the civil rights movement, which we all know. He's written dozens of wonderful love songs, which we all know. And he's written dozens of American or even world State of the Union messages, which are applicable today. Even some of the ones that he wrote 40 or 50 years ago, we can still use today because, of course, we still have the same problems of racial injustice and war and so on and so forth. So Dylan, his work is timeless, and it's going to reverberate for not just years or decades, for centuries. And in that, I do think it's incredibly valid that he's gets the Nobel Prize for Literature. He's got an Academy Award. It sounds like I'm his publicist. He's got an Academy Award. He's got a Pulitzer Prize. Obama gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. This is not someone that's a song and dance man, although he made that joke once that he was.
Well, what does he think, then? I mean, you've written 2 books about him. What does he think when he is given honours like that?
One would be hard-pressed to read Bob Dylan's mind. I think that he will be secretly quite pleased. Now, he's not an overtly emotional guy when he gets these kind of awards and stuff, but one notices on his amp every night when he does a concert, he has the Academy Award sitting there, or at least a replica of his Academy Award. So he obviously has some pride there. He went to Washington to get the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Obama in person, and there's a slight grin on his face. But of course, being Bob Dylan, he's got to wear the butterfly sunglasses so you can't read his eyes. But I think that, there you are, I think that Dylan will be so pleased. I know he's got family that'll be so pleased for him. He's got a brother, he's got children. This is going to mean a lot to him and the Zimmerman family back in the States. I mean, this is someone that's really, really made their mark, and more importantly, he's timeless in the way that we still think that it's Greek to me, or whatever Shakespearean phrase. Phrases of Dylan's are going to be used in the future, and there's not many people, even those who have been nominated for the Nobel Prize for Literature, that can say that.
And the first songwriter ever to be given this prize.
Yes.
And is that saying that music can be as significant, when it's at its best, it can be as important as a great novel or a great play?
I think so. I think we have to acknowledge that songwriters, even though it's a bit of a telegraph, the songwriter's just giving you sort of a telegraph. He's not giving you a long State of the Union message that some people can when they're doing an Ibsen play or something like that. Maybe Bob Dylan's just sending a telegraph message, but his messages are urgent, and they're valid, and they're important. I think that Dylan is a cut above well, it's obvious he's a cut above the average songwriter, but more importantly, he's saying something that has a depth and resonance that other songwriters can't match. I think many people listening to my voice now will love Bob Marley, will adore Joni Mitchell, will worship at the feet of Leonard Cohen, and that's all very fair and very valid. But I really think that when all is said and done, Dylan is going to be the guy that is the one guy that stands out. Britain's late John Lennon said his favorite Beatles songs are the ones that he or Paul wrote that stood as a piece of poetry without the melody behind it, or the harmony behind it, or the production behind it. Well, more than half of Dylan's songs stand without any music behind them whatsoever. I mean, this is a guy that you could take 100 Bob Dylan songs lyrics, put them in a poetry book, and you have a marvelous piece of poetic literature. Marvelous.
But do you like it?
Yes. Yes.
I was kind of taking that as read by that point. Sid Griffin, a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Now we're just going to bring you a bit of news coming up from Geneva.